Dave, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, super excited to be here, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, um, before I hit record, I mentioned you're in a different area. You're in a different place. Like you're not in your office, and you opened up about having to kind of relocate. So let's talk a little bit about that on the recording, just so people understand entrepreneurship a little bit. And you still showing up to this call. Talk a little bit about where you are now and what's going on.
Yeah, so I'm calling you from the Oregon coast, and I'm actually looking at the beach from where I'm sitting, which is not a bummer. But I'm usually up in the mountains this time of year. And yesterday morning, I got up to go work out and smelled smoke and went, oh no. And then my neighbor said, hey, there's a fire that just started like 2 miles down the road from us, and another one broke containment like 5 miles south of us, and it's all blowing our way because we kind of live in this crevasse of mountain ranges that kind of go down into this valley where the river that we live on is. It all kind of converges into this one spot. The winds were blowing together. So my 80 plus year old grandparents are in town, and I've got 3 kiddos and a dog and my wife. I'm like, okay, how fast can we get out of here? Because the winds were blowing 20 plus miles per hour. And so we were able to get everybody loaded up and get on the road in 2 hours and booked an Airbnb on the coast. And here we are. And now my neighbors decided to stay closer, and they said, hey, it's actually really bad smoke here. Can we come join you at the Airbnb? And I said, come on, we got more space. So full house, man.
Dude, I love it. And that's kind of a nod to entrepreneurship, right? Like we hear, unfortunately, these crazy wildfires that happen out your way and down the coast of California. And, so many people end up getting displaced in a terrible way, but being able to grow your wealth as an entrepreneur, it gives you the flexibility to be able to make shifts, make decisions on demand. Like how many people would be frozen in thought process of, oh my gosh, what do I do? There's a fire somewhere near my house. And obviously, we can pray and hope. And by the time I release this, I hope I can record the intro and say, all is well. Dave's house is still standing. We're good to go. But talk a little bit about kind of, and obviously we're going to talk about entrepreneurship in this episode and soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about that too. But let's talk a little bit about kind of your journey into entrepreneurship and how you really got started, like when the bug bit and what was your journey like?
So I've never told this story on a podcast, Justin.
I love it. And you said before we hit record, you've done a ton of these. So look, I've already unlocked something new.
I know you've already unlocked. Well, it's one of those stories that it's so goofy, but it's fun. So when I was 4, I drew a picture like a 4-year-old, and I thought it was awesome. And I was the grandparents that are with me right now, I was hanging with them. And they were having a dinner party with their friends. And I said to my grandparents, I'm going to sell this picture for $100. Now, this is back in the 80s. $100 is a lot of money, especially for a 4-year-old drawing. Well, somehow, some way, through the course of the evening, I was able to sell this 4-year-old drawing for $40.
Wow. Wow.
To one of my grandparents, and it would have been a good story even if I sold it for $5, but I sold it for $40. So that's kind of how I got started, Justin. And then that kind of progressed. When I was 10, I went to my dad and asked for a $5 loan to go buy some candy bars. I bought them for a quarter and I sold them for 50 cents out of my backpack. And then that turned into selling erasers and pencils and pens. And I'd find all sorts of fun stuff that like elementary school kids think is awesome. And I'd just double the price and sell it up. And mark it up. And I actually had that business going for a few years. It was super fun. Did some lawn mowing stuff, but then my first real grown-up business I launched when I was 25. And I'd been doing marketing in-house for a number of different companies. I was running MySpace and Friendster and building websites and shooting video. And I had no idea how to run an agency. I had no idea how to really run a real business, but I was like, man, I have to go do this thing. And so not a ton of money. I had no startup funding. I had nothing. And I started a digital ad agency. And the first 18 months, I did 2 jobs. I had my day job, and then I had the agency. And so I did what a lot of people do. You're asking about entrepreneurship and how having to make decisions really quickly and leave. For 18 months, I'd wake up in the morning at 5. I'd start working on the business. I'd work until 7:30. Then I'd go hop in the shower, get ready, drive into work. Remember when we used to drive into work, Justin?
Yeah, right. What, the good old days? Is that what they call
That's
that?
crazy. And so then I'd drive into work and I'd go sit in an office and I'd work the day job, get done at 4:30 or 5, and then drive home, hang out with my wife, and we had a newborn at the time. And then about 7:30 at night, I'd go back to work, and I'd usually work from 7:30 to 10:30, 11, and then repeat. And then on the weekends, I would do 2 full 8-hour days. And so I did that for 18 months before I went full time with the company. And I basically hadn't been paying myself. I'd been paying another business partner at the time because he was doing it full time. And my wife finally said after 18 months, "Hey, we never see you."
I was going to say, God bless your wife. 18 months is a long time.
Dude, it's a really long time. And so she finally said, just pick one. I don't care what you pick, but you got to pick one. So I think that we had like, because I put so much into the business, I think we had 12 grand left in the bank account. And so I said, I'll spend 10. And if I spend the 10 and I can't pay myself a salary of 30,000 a year, then I'll quit after 5 months. And so long story short, after 5 months, was able to pay myself $2,500 a month, ended up building up that business over the next several years to multiple 7 figures, and then eventually sold that. And now I own an entirety or a piece of 8 different companies. So fun stuff, man.
No, that's crazy. And I love that you shared that, because I did the same thing, right? So when I started one of my businesses that I started with, it was on the side. And it was really, I mean, I would come home during my lunch breaks and do work and, do what I could to try and get the ball rolling. But then you kind of have that moment, right? My moment looked different than yours. I wasn't married at the time. I was a single guy in a 1-bedroom apartment. So it was a little bit of an easier thing. And honestly, the job that I had decided it for me. But there was a great moment there where it goes, okay, like, for lack of a better term, shit or get off the pot, right? Like, you're either going to go all in on this and blow it up, or you're just going to kind of continue to dabble. And I think that if I stayed dabbling with a day job, I would have never been able to replace an income, let alone, surpass that income that I was making. So talk a little bit about how much that changed for you within the business. Like, how did it allow you to kind of open that up? And now, like you mentioned, multiple 7 figures.
Yeah, I think, one of the gifts that my parents gave me, they gave me many. One of the gifts they gave me was they made me go work a retail job when I was in high school. My parents make tons of money. They've always done really well. And I didn't need to work, there was no need for me to have a job. And they were like, hey, go work. So I got a job at Timberland in the mall, as a factory outlet. And I'm making minimum wage. And I worked so hard. I'd always been a hard worker. And I made so little money. And I started to realize early on in my career that was just always going to be the case. And so I realized a couple things pretty quickly, that for myself, I didn't find working for someone else to be stable, because they were never going. I knew this as an early 20-something. I was like, they're never going to fire themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to fire someone like me. And then they're going to fire higher ups. And then they would ultimately fire themselves, because that's just the nature of the beast. So as I'm working that job and I'm trying to make that transition and this shit or get off the pot moment, it was like, that was always the goal. And I'm so grateful that there was an inciting incident, my wife, to be like, bro, you need to jump in one direction. And I'm really, really thankful for how that all worked out, man. And it's helped me to realize, like, doing the double duty, that's not somewhere I want to go, but it's somewhere I can go if I ever need to kick into another gear. I've got it. I think one of the things that's interesting, Justin, I bet this has been the case for you, but I'd love to hear if it has been. I find that I've proven to myself over and over and over again in my entrepreneurial journey, I can do anything. And it's like, dude, no matter how hard the obstacle is, no matter how challenging, no matter how uncertain, I always figure it out.
Yeah.
It may not look like how I thought it was going to, but I always figured it out. Have you experienced that as well?
100%. And there were those moments, especially early on, where you're like, oh, do I have to go get a job? Like I need to go make $5,000 to make sure that I can make it through the next 3 weeks or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden there it is. But really, I mean, I think more than anything, when you think of an entrepreneur and the mindset that we take into things, we're constantly putting in the work, right? I think the hardest shift for me, and I'd love to hear your take on this. The hardest shift for me was going from a guaranteed paycheck to nothing guaranteed. So all of a sudden money's coming in and like, oh, I just made 10 grand. You know how long that would take me in a day job? Like to have that switch, to understand that they're feast or famine at times. Did you ever experience that?
Oh, of course I did. Yeah. I mean, the way that I've always looked at entrepreneurship, when I launched my first company at 25, was it's just like, because I used to play a lot of poker in college and high school, and I looked at it like I was playing Texas Hold'em, no limit. I was pushing all the chips into the center all the time. And what am I doing? I'm making calculated guesses based off the information that I have in front of me, which is a lot of what poker is. And then I'm playing the hand that I've got, and I'm playing the other players, and that's it. But it's that same moment of, and I don't, Josh, Justin, I'm sorry, I should call you.
You're
Josh.
good, man.
Justin, have you ever played poker, like all in, no limit?
Yeah, and I'm terrible, and I mean, I love it when I get together with somebody. So I love the game. I'm just really, really bad.
So have you had the moment where you've shoved all in on something, Justin?
Oh yeah.
Been like, yeah. It's the same to me. It's the same feeling. I feel it in my gut of like that. Oh shit, I have to make $10,000 this month, or we're in trouble. And it's like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, that's rough. And so, yeah, I've totally had those moments repeatedly. I mean, I've had them in all of the businesses, and sometimes, and this is what happens when you scale a business too. I know that I'm sure that you've experienced this too, Justin, but when you scale a business and you're doing really well and the numbers are going up, and you're doing multiple 7 figures, getting 8 figures, you can lose profitability so quick that you have the same thing happen as you did when you started out. We have no money. And people are like looking at you like, dude, you own this multi-million-dollar company. You got to be killing it. And you're like, dude, if you only knew that I'm putting payroll on credit cards this month because we have to ship. And so, yeah, I don't think that ever leaves.
Yeah.
We think about the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet right now, Elon Musk. He's in trouble. He's bleeding cash like crazy. He's genius, super smart, bleeding cash like crazy. Bezos and Amazon were not profitable for a decade. Like it just, and so when we think about Twitter wasn't profitable until like Q4 of 2019 or something, 13 years after they launched. Yeah, it's bananas. And so we look at that and we go, oh, that's just unique to a small company. No, it's not. You're going to have those problems over again. And the way that you kind of, I think, help solve those later on when they get bigger is you remind yourself of, oh yeah, I did this when it's smaller. And the only thing that's changed is the zeros behind it, but it's just a number.
Yeah. I mean, I've never played with as many zeros as you, in fairness. Now we talk about these all-in moments, and I'm in that all-in moment right now with this company that you and I spoke about last time we were talking. Right. And so I'm going all in on this idea because I believe that it has legs. And I think that this is really kind of the thing that's going to grow a massive wealth for me on the back end. It's a completely different mindset for the first time that I'm walking into of like, okay, like this isn't just a legacy thing that I'm building. Cause a lot of like anything growth now that I've built has been passion driven. Now it makes money, don't get me wrong, but like it's passion driven. Like I have no desire ever to sell it. Like it's always going to be the growth and movement with Justin Shank, right? Like that's always what it's going to be. This is the first time where it is fully that all in moment, right? As we talk about, like I'm all in on this idea because I see where it can go, and I'm scaling and building a team and doing these things. And you're going, yeah, we're making money, but it's going to other people. Like it's just one day at a time. But I also love the fact that you took Elon, right? So he did an interview recently with, who was it with? What's it called? What are those guys? They're like political satire. but Bumble, anyway, they're hilarious. And so he did an interview with them and he talked about how like, yeah, everybody talks about how rich I am. He's like, but it's not like I have that cash sitting in the bank account, right? Like, yeah, he can go buy things and do things, but how much credit is he working on, right? So I want to talk a little bit with you about time management. And here's why, right? You talked about owning portions or all of 8 different companies. Like, that's overwhelming to most people hearing that, because they're like, I can't even juggle one. I can't even juggle my job, let alone 8 companies. Yeah. How do you manage your time going into this and being able to, again, financially budget those all in moments?
Yeah, it's funny, Justin, I get asked that a lot, and I've had to take a step back and go, man, I guess this is really unique, because to me, it just seems intuitive. And I'm not trying to be arrogant there. I'm just being, I'm having a sincere, transparent moment with you. One of the things that I have realized makes that possible is I really try and find a great operator to put in each company. And then I meet with that operator every week. And so that gives me a pulse on how that company is doing. I also have dashboards that help me understand the health of the company. So I can see how many agreements they had signed, how many new students have said yes, what the price tag is, what we should expect to see, what's the cash in the bank right now, what's our anticipated cash flow. So I'm having these sorts of high level understandings of the health of each company. I even look at how many new leads they have this week, right? And so all that information really gives me an insight into where to use my time and to have the highest leverage. Right now, one of the things that I'm spending an inordinate amount of time on, because I know the leverage is so high, is I'm finishing my first book. And we're really pushing that out. We're going through the editing phase right now, and it's absolutely brutal. As a friend of mine who's written and published 6 different books said to me, he goes, hey, just so you know, when you hate the book and just want to throw it all out, that's when it's about ready to be done. And I'm just kidding there. I'm just like, the whole thing sucks. I want to be done. Anyways, I'm spending my time where I can have the most leverage. So I spend a lot of time developing key leadership positions. I spend a lot of time making sure that if a company is off track, either by profitability or revenue or marketing or whatever, that's an indicator for me needing to be involved more heavily. And then there are some companies, like right now, I have a company that I just barely touch because it's really going well. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then I've got one that's kind of a dumpster fire that needs a lot of attention from Dave. And I just here's what's interesting as you do the I've been doing this 10 years now. As you do the entrepreneurial journey, one of the things that happens is wherever you put weight, even just a little bit, it instantly has an impact. And it's been really interesting, Justin. I'm excited to watch you do this as you keep doing what you're doing too, man. But it's been really interesting, brother, to just be like, man, if I go spend 3 weeks over here, just like 20 hours a week for 3 weeks, so like 60 hours total, they have totally flipped. And now the dumpster fire is totally getting put out, and we're actually seeing the growth that we needed in the first place, and everything's moving in the right direction. And it only took 60 hours of my time. That's pretty great.
Yeah, dude, that's huge. So I don't know all your businesses. How much are they kind of in the same family, or what's the wide variance of these 8 businesses as far as what you guys are serving and all the things?
So I own 4 different agencies. So they have different niches that are in the marketing, PR, advertising space. They serve a lot of agencies, hilariously. So like ad agencies need help with the services that we provide. I own a flight school with my brother.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you shared that with me. That's so random, but it's not random. I mean, just from the outside when you don't know.
Yeah, no, it's totally, it doesn't fit any of the other businesses, right? Like, it's just so weird. And it's growing exceptionally fast. We have what I like to call champagne problems. We need to buy more airplanes. We need to have more space to put those airplanes in. So we're like, well, I've never built a hangar before. I don't even know how to find a contractor for that. What do we, there's all these fun things you have to figure out with that. So that's kind of interesting. I own 2 SaaS products that serve agencies as well as other companies, small businesses. And the agencies that I own too, they also serve like B2B SaaS products and tech and all sorts of stuff as well. And then the last one is a digital asset management firm that also does cybersecurity. And so did you know, Justin, because I didn't know this until I was talking with my business partner over there about this, but the average worker spends 56 minutes a day just searching for digital files to be able to do their job. On
Wow.
top of that, the average employee spends 4 hours a week recreating a document that already exists somewhere else in your company. And so we started a company that helps people analyze what their digital assets are, organize them so that people can find them, and then show them information so that they're like, hey, I need to go create this SOP for whatever this is. They can type it into a search function. It pulls up and says, oh, Susie already made that 6 months ago. Let me use that as a starting point, or maybe I don't need to make it at all. So it's a pretty cool thing.
No, that's incredible. And obviously it's very much I see a problem and I'm going to solve it, right? I see this problem that's happening in the world. Let me be the person that comes in and solves that problem, which is that's really entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
There's a problem in the world. Let me solve it, or let me make it easier, or let me do it better than the other people that are already solving it, right? Like that's really what you're looking at. And I love the variety, but obviously there is some similarities with every single company other than the flight school at this point. But how are you able to shift gears so often, right? Like I think one thing as I'm growing, what I'm doing and my portfolio is growing and I'm doing different things, it gets difficult for me to go from Justin the interviewer to Justin the interviewee to Justin the production guy to Justin and so what are you able to do, or how are you able to switch so quickly so you can manage so much at the same time?
I have a lot of practices that help me stay sane. Some of those, it was interesting. I was talking with a guy that's doing some development of a software for one of the companies, and his company is based in Ukraine. And he said, I heard you on a podcast, Dave, and you were talking about your practices. And he said, I started to incorporate some of those. And he said, I'm finding great peace all of a sudden. And so some of the things that I do on a daily basis, I work out every day. And that could be as light as, hey, I'm going to go do a few mile walk. That's a very light, easy breezy sort of exercise, to I will run sprints like I played soccer growing up, 100 yards down, 100 yards back as fast as I can, and then rest for 40 to 60 seconds and then do it again. And I'll do those for 30 minutes, I'll do those and lift weights. So that's one facet of it. The other facet is I meditate on a regular basis, usually once a day. I also do things where I just slow down, read a good book that is not trying to get me, to the next level of my business, but is about personally helping me. I do a lot of things where, simple stuff like I won't watch TV or look at my phone for the first hour of the day. And I try and listen to a book that's going to spiritually orient me to what I have going on. And so I try and do these little practices because when I was 29 and had a really successful company, my doc said, hey, we've tested 4,500 people. We've given them the stress test, and you're the most stressed person we've ever tested. And if you don't change your behavior, you're not going to see 40. You're not going to walk your daughter down the aisle. You're not even going to see her graduate. And so I was like, damn, okay, well, I have to figure this out. And so those actually help me shift gears too. Being grounded, being rooted really allows me to go from, hey, I had an L10 meeting with leaders in one company that needs my attention right now, to, hey, now I'm going to do an interview with Justin, to right after this, I've got a stacked back-to-back calls with more people that need my time, love, and attention for different companies. And I just go, okay, here I am, man. Like, what else am I going to do today? Right. This is where I get to show up and be myself. And so it's really, I think the practice has helped me shift. And it's also practice of shifting gears that helps me shift.
Dude, I'm so glad you shared that. It's funny. I asked the same question to every single person I have on the show. You already answered part 2 of that question later down, which is what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? But we'll get to the first part a little bit later because I'm curious. But you said so much there, right? You had mentioned doing something to connect whatever you're working on to you spiritually.
Yeah.
Curious, what does that mean to you? What does spirituality mean to you?
Yeah. Oh, Justin, you're getting such good stuff out of me today that no one else gets, man. Way to ask a great question, brother. Yeah, man. So I grew up as a military brat, and very conservative Christian family upbringing. And I actually am an ordained pastor. Very, very few people know that. Yeah, I know, it's great,
That's
right?
crazy.
And I really thought I was going to go for a while. I really thought I was going to be like a minister or something. And it just wasn't my jam, because I don't think that you should. I saw what that looked like and it wasn't my thing. And so over time, as I left childhood and moved more into adulthood, and I kind of have this belief that your 20s are all about finding out who you really are, right? And your 30s are about being like, yeah, I'm cool with it. In my 20s, I just started to really question everything that I had been taught. And in that questioning, I found some beautiful, beautiful teachers who have helped me tremendously. So I love people that like Ram Dass, who is a guy that's passed recently, but a beautiful spiritual teacher. Alan Watts, I find to be incredibly helpful to me as well. There's a woman named Byron Katie. She has completely helped me eliminate my anxiety. Just like, and so those are the kinds of people that really help me spiritually, the ones that are, showing me a new way to look at old ideas. And I think that there's a really helpful, and also outside of that, because I have some atheists on my staff. They're like, hey, I don't want to engage with those people. Do you have somebody else? I'm like, I do. Have you read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius? And they're like, no. And I'm like, it's the same thing. It's just from a Stoic philosophy perspective. And I read him all the time too. So enjoy. And they read Meditations and they go, oh my gosh, I find so much peace here. I'm like, yeah, because there's a universal truth to some of these realities. So that's what I mean by that. What does it mean for you, Justin? If you don't mind me asking, I'm curious what your definition of spirituality is.
Yeah, it's funny. So I talk about the 4 pillars of life, which is business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And spirituality is always that one where people are like, well, what's this, right? So I grew up in the church. My grandfather was a pastor. He actually ran all the Methodist churches in the state of New Jersey at one point. So he was like an OG. He was great. And I grew up religious, right? And so I still consider myself a Christian to this day. I despise organized religion and what it stands for. And I believe most of the atheists in the world live now because of organized religion. And so spirituality to me, there's 2 parts to it. One is there's something greater than you. You have to acknowledge that there's something greater than you. Didn't create what is happening out here, right? And I don't care if you believe in the Big Bang. I don't care if it's God. I don't care if it's Allah, whatever you want to call it. There's something greater than you. And the second part is you have to acknowledge that we're all energy. And so the key to spirituality for me is to make decisions daily, whether it be through meditation, through making the right choices, by treating other people the right way, to make sure that the energy around you is flowing with you instead of against you.
Ooh, that's good. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you break that down, because nobody can argue that we're energy, right? Like, So it's funny. So my girlfriend my fiance slipped up there. My fiance, almost wife, is very, very spiritual, right? Like, so she's a certified yoga teacher, Reiki, crystals, all these things. And I always
sounds like my wife.
Yeah. And I still make jokes about the crystals to this day. I call them rocks. But she actually explains crystals the best way I've ever heard it explained. And I keep looking to the left because I have crystals in my office now. And so she goes, look, everything's vibrating, right? And so the crystals are tools that are set to a specific vibration due to how they were made that can help you with your vibration and raise you to the level you need to raise. I'm like, genius, absolutely genius. She's like, it's second grade science. It's second grade science. So it's absolutely genius. And so, I think once I started to dive into the spiritual side of things, first I went through a terrible inner turmoil because I questioned everything. Right.
Yeah.
And then it allowed me to open up to the joy of questioning everything. And I think that's really kind of what I wanted to get to with you. How important is it to be able to openly question things, whether it be in life or in business?
That's vital. We have the same core values for all of our companies, and they're in order. And there's 6 of them. And the second one is curiosity. And curiosity is just, hey, why? How? What? It's asking the question. And we know that that's really important no matter what we're doing, whether it's training people in the flight school. Hey, why do we do it this way? What is it about this plane that you need to know? How does it work? All those things lead to a better flight experience, lead to a better pilot, because a lot of the people that we train end up going to the airlines. So we believe it's our duty to give these men and women like really phenomenal training so that they take care of people when they get to the airlines. Like, that's important. I want my pilot to be someone that we train, honestly. And so anyway, it's vital, Justin. I don't know how you can run a business and not question everything. I don't know how you can live a life that's vibrant and beautiful and conducive to joy without questioning everything.
Yeah, I love it. I'm flying out to Austin on Sunday, so I'll make sure it's one of your pilots before I get on the plane. Dude, flying right now is just an absolute nightmare. I hope they figure that out. So I'm questioning what they're doing wrong. That's my biggest question point right now. But I think it is vital, man, and that's everything. And it's not to question things from a negative light. I think a lot of times when people hear, oh, question all the things, it seems like I'm the negative Nancy or that individual's the negative Nancy, but it's really trying to figure out how can it be done better, or what's being done here, or why is this being done, which allows you to open up to the possibility to deliver something better. And I think that's entrepreneurship in itself, right?
Yeah. And I think, one of those quotes that I just absolutely resonates with me on this is, we question all our beliefs except the ones that we think not to question. And it's like, those are actually the ones that need questioning. In my first business, I was like, hey, we're doing 7 figures, we're crushing it. And I wasn't questioning at what cost. And it was at the cost of my own body that we were doing what we were doing. I was networking my way to 7 figures. And so it was in that space that I was like, well, what if you could not have to go to so many networking events? What if you didn't have to do just connection to find a client? What if you could create a new way to do it? And that ultimately led me to doing outsourced sales development rep work now, because I did it for myself back then and it got us a bunch of new clients. So that was it. You know what I mean? And so it's important to question everything. Yeah.
I love it, man. So obviously you've created success in your life across the board, and you've been able to find some peace in your life. And I'm sure that's a continuous work in progress, as most of us are always working on that. But I'd love to ask you, I told you about the second part of the question, 3 things you do every single day. You already answered that. But the first part is always, what is your definition of success? Like, really, what are you going after in life?
It's impact. What gets me out of bed in the morning every single day is making small businesses work. I think that there's something sacred about entrepreneurship, and there's something, dare I say, holy about small business. When we look at businesses that have gone awry, 99% of the time, they're large corporations that have lost the spirit of what they're doing. And there's all sorts of really, really interesting data that, as humans, it's really challenging for us to know another person and really know everybody that we're working with when your organization grows beyond 150 people. And some larger corporations that I know of, Gore-Tex being the one that I'm very intimately aware of, they build their factories to be no more than 150 people so that they keep it so that you can know your coworkers. Wow, they employ 6,000 people though. So they built more factories in order to give people the feeling of community without losing the scope of what they could accomplish with how large they become. So for me, success is like, man, I really, really, really believe in small businesses. I believe in what they're able to accomplish. And success to me is helping those people that decide to take on that journey really find the success that they so desire, because we need them desperately as a society and as a world.
That's great. I want to shift gears really quick. I mentioned earlier about soccer or football or whatever you want to call it. So to rewind a number of years ago, to me, soccer was the dumbest sport of all time. Typical American, like, why would you be excited for a tie? What is happening? And then during the pandemic, I discovered the greatest television show of all time, Ted Lasso. And it really started to open my eyes. Now, do I sit down and watch soccer? No, I don't. But I still watch Ted Lasso, and I can't wait for season 1 to come around. And then Wrexham. So there's a show, I think it's just called Wrexham. There might be more words to it than that, but it's, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney from Always Sunny.
Yep.
And they bought a football team in Wrexham. And it's the most fascinating thing. Understanding, you see a little bit more of the business side of these teams, of these leagues, of all these things. Like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. It is a business. Oh, wow. Most of them aren't profitable. Oh, wow. Like, how much does it, if you can infuse dollars into it, how much of a difference does that make? And you and I were talking, and you're like, yeah, I'm buying a couple of football teams. And I was like, that's not even real life. Like, we're talking Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. That's still not real life. So talk a little bit about, obviously you grew up playing soccer. What has been your draw to now, okay, now I want to buy a couple teams? That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so I look at life as kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyways? Remember that old show?
Yeah. I love that show. Yeah.
Oh, it's a great show. Right. And so I look at it and I'm like, life is like a game that's made up and the points don't matter. So like, if that's what it is, and I really believe that, by the way, then what could you do with your time? And I'm like, man, I want to own like 5, 6, 7, 8 different soccer/football teams in Europe and the States. And you can, like, these are not, these soccer teams are not out of bounds financially. They're not crazy. And one of the things that is rarely known, Justin, is that one singular team is not profitable very often, or not profitable by a whole lot. In fact, in the span of 2019 to 2021, obviously the pandemic was in there. So a lot of these clubs lost a lot of revenue because they either weren't playing games, and when they did play games for a while, they didn't have any fans in the stands, and they make a lot of money that way. There are 1,000 clubs in Europe. Only 10 of them were profitable in that span. Yeah. But there are a few groups that own multiple teams. All of those groups are extremely profitable. And it's because they're able to, hey, we've got a player, we can shift money around. Because, and this is what I love about soccer too, especially in Europe. Soccer is way more capitalistic in how it functions in Europe than how we do sports in the US. Sports in the US, hey, if I have the worst football team, I get rewarded with the top pick in the NFL draft. And that guy could change the trajectory of my franchise by being terrible. In Europe, if you're terrible, you get relegated, you lose revenue, you lose the ability to sign premier players. It's a bad gig, right? So with this, it's like, man, this makes it really fun. It's just scaling up a business.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man. So I love soccer. I love the game. There's a lot to be had. There's a lot to experience with it. I love being around athletes. I played multiple sports growing up as a kid. It's still a passion of mine. And if you have the ability and the drive, why not do it, bro?
Yeah. No, I love it. Now, since we've spoken, have you watched any of Wrexham yet?
I still haven't watched Wrexham yet. No, I want to. It's on the list. I know, man. I want to so bad, but it's just...
Dude, while you're in your Airbnb by the water, watch one episode. It's on FX, like, because I don't have cable, but I like stream the channels or whatever.
Yep.
And dude, you got to watch it. You're gonna absolutely love the whole entire, because they talk about all this stuff you're talking about. Like, that's how I learned about being dropped down in leagues and understanding that teams can't afford the premier guys. And this team, obviously, with Ryan Reynolds money, they were able to bring a guy down from the league above because they could afford him, like all those types of things. Like it's fascinating. I think you'll really love it. So you have to check it out.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out, man. That's great.
For sure. For sure. Now, obviously, I know we don't have a ton of more time here, but I'd love to ask you a question that I recently kind of put back into a rotation. I normally don't ask the same questions to everybody. When I first started, I did rapid fire 5 questions at the end, and I realized one of the questions was absolute gold, and I stopped asking it for so long, but I'm bringing it back. So I'm curious, man, if you look at your life, you've been able to build multiple businesses. You've been able to not only do it from a profitable standpoint for you, but you employ many people who they get to go home with their paychecks and, provide for their families and all these amazing things you've been able to build out. At the end of your life, if all that goes away and you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that sentence be?
He loved everybody. I just want to love people, man. It's, I think it's cheesy. It's cheesy as hell. And that's what it's all about in the end, the people that we love. Right. And so, yeah, I hope that's it.
Dude, I love it. I love it. Now I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people find you? How do they get a hold of you? And give us a little insight into this book that is releasing hopefully soon.
Yeah. So hopefully it's tentative publish date is January. So we'll see what that actually
Fingers
looks
crossed.
like. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So people can find me on social media at real Dval, DVAL, on Twitter, Instagram, and I'm on the TikTok, as the old people would say. And so people can find me there. You can also, if you're interested in talking to me about specific businesses or whatever, you can also reach out to me, David at rethinkcreative.org is my personal email. So people can reach me there. And then the book is about the core values, actually. So we had this whole internal discussion. I'm this guy that has grown up in marketing and sales and revenue growth, but we hire, promote, fire, build our companies around these 6 core values. And as I've shared them with other entrepreneurs, they kind of light up. And I've had people that I consult with as entrepreneurs to go, can I just adopt your 6 core values? I'm like, yeah, go for it, man. And it changes their business too. And these have been refined over the past 10 years. And I used to think that core values were such bullshit, man. Like it's like a mission statement or a vision statement. If no one knows them, then they don't mean anything. But because of the way that we implement these, we talk about them every single week as teams. And then we review our employees every quarter on those core values. And that's how we evaluate them. Are they hitting tenacity? Are they being curious? Are they taking initiative? And so that's what the book's about, is these core 6 values and how they really can change your business and honestly change your life as well. And so that's what the book's about.
So we got the first 3. What are the last 3?
So the last 3 are accountability, transparency, and humanity. So they're in order for a reason. So tenacity is number 1, curiosity number 2, initiative number 3, accountability, transparency, and humanity. What's interesting, Justin, and this is something I talk about in the book, but I haven't talked about in public too much. When you move into leadership, we actually reverse that importance. You have to lead with humanity, transparency, and accountability. And so, but the only way that you can get to being in leadership at any one of the companies is you have to have those first 3 in spades, but it's just reversing the order. And when we start to talk about that with our leaders, they go, oh, wow, brand new challenge. And this is one of the things that we found over and over again. If you can continually challenge your employees, they will stick around, they'll be happy, and they will rise to the occasion. So it's a fun way to look at how you lead people.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited to grab your book when it comes out and dive in, because it sounds incredible. Now, obviously, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh my gosh. So many to choose from. Biggest growth moment. I think that my biggest growth moment came when I started my first business, honestly, because I knew I was going to start my business. We launched it on May 1st of 2013. And a month before that, we found out that we were pregnant with our first kid, my oldest daughter. And so it was one of those moments where I just went, you have to be successful, and there's no other option for you. And so it was the time where I instantly had to grow up. And I did. And it's a decision that I continually make all the time, is to love and serve and care for my wife and our 3 kiddos. So I think that was it.
I love it, man. Dave, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight. I'd love to have you back on when the book comes out so we can help promote
Oh,
that
thank
and
you.
everything else in between. This conversation was a ton of fun, and I look forward to seeing where our friendship goes, man.
Likewise, Justin. Thanks so much, brother.